set up perfect where we could have a studio in the front and then have this little cocktail
have a
bar
party
off
in the
that.
back.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello, and welcome to Architecting.
This is a podcast about the lives of architects.
About the people and stories behind the buildings that we see around us and the images that brought them to life.
And with the very international world that we live in,
This show will purposefully be local and narrow.
Only focusing on the Colorado community of designers.
Hi, I'm the host of Architecting, Adam Wagoner. I'm a Denver-based architect. I'm married to an architect. I have 2 architecture degrees, and I've worked for a dozen different architecture firms in 3 different countries. But for these last 5 years, I've been rooted in Denver, where I am at Open Studio Architecture, and I teach at the University of Colorado, Denver. I love connecting with other designers and learning from their experiences. Now I'm broadcasting these stories with the goal of creating a stronger local community. So today on the show, we have another design couple, Brandon and Tana Anderson, founders of LIVstudio. So as a architect married to an architect myself, I've looked up to this couple and the work that they have created, especially the restaurant environments that they've crafted, like Il Posto, Super Mega Bien, Sushi, Rama, Denver Central Market, and Greenlight Lab. This couple has worked for many of the major Denver architecture firms, as well as offices in California and Texas. We really could have talked a lot longer about their work and the way that they figured out how to collaborate and create projects together, but this interview is still an hour and 20 minutes long. And actually, after our interview officially ended, we just kept on talking and I kept the tapes rolling. So I've included some more of our conversation as a bonus after the credits. So check that out if you'd like. Enjoy. So our goal at Architecting is to help connect Colorado designers, and nobody is already doing this better than Modern in Denver. For over a decade, Modern in Denver has been striving to bring architects together and to educate the public about what good design can be and can accomplish. I'm very excited to be working together with them now on this shared goal. So over the years, they have constantly created fantastically curated stories about Colorado designers and projects, and work to connect the profession with live local events. So go out now, buy a copy of their new print issue, subscribe to their weekly email list, and follow them on Instagram.
Doing well. Just scrambling here this week.
yeah, it sounded like that.
Big deadlines. Turning into CDs for a project tomorrow. So, yeah.
Well, sorry this landed.
No, it's all right. It's all kinds of things land when you don't anticipate them.
Nice.
You can't plan out everything. So,
Yeah, I'm guessing a lot of weeks are fairly hectic for you guys.
yeah, I think so. Tana just showed up here.
Hey,
Hello.
Tana.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah, that's just what it is. I think, I don't know how many years ago, we just stopped complaining about being busy. We were just like, hey, nobody cares, and everybody else is busy. So,
And being busy means you're hopefully getting paid, I guess, right? Or
yeah, hopefully
doing good.
Hopeful.
Busy good. We started CDs in January 15th, or we started just the overall
We
project.
met the client.
Like, we met the
January
client
15th.
January 15th, and we're done tomorrow. So, yeah.
Wow, is that a normal burn?
No, it was fast.
We're trying to meet an
Trying to
end
meet a
date.
certain deadline.
And we don't, deadlines like that are painful. And I told Brandon, I said, we're setting a really bad precedent that we can get it done. But, one of the things that we love is like really meeting the client where they need to be. And this is kind of one of those dates that isn't really, it's not set by them. It's
just a holiday. So
it's a holiday.
They want to hit
So,
it, so we're going to try to help them do it.
yep.
Have you been seeing that a lot? Like coming out of COVID, restaurants trying to ramp up or refresh, or
Yeah, definitely our phone started ringing a lot mid-December. You know, after the election, once the vaccine got approved, you know, a lot of restaurateurs are seeing that there's open space available. A lot of them that we're seeing are actually existing brands that want to expand and see this opportunity. So some new brands as well, but yeah,
it's good to see people surviving and coming out of it.
Exactly.
And seeing a future, you know.
No, they're as a sector or you know, a group of people, they're the one of the more hopeful groups, and always looking for, you know, they see the bright side of things a lot. They're the optimist.
Yeah,
which is why we can always relate to them with the chefs and stuff, because I think architects are typically optimists.
That's interesting. It seems like such a volatile business. I mean, the restaurant business, but to have
not the architecture business.
At least, maybe with both, it's hit and miss. Maybe
right.
Yeah, but
it's volatile. It is. It's, you know, only certain ones, you know, survive or make it for multiple years. If you make it for I don't know how many years, and that's successful. And then if you're able to maybe then even sell it after that, that's even more successful. You know, some of our clients feel like. So
yeah,
and then go on and do other things.
It's interesting, that idea of optimism. So who are you able to describe yourself as a couple and as a team, kind of a 2-sentence bio of who you are? Does that play into it, that word?
2-sentence bio of who we are.
I don't know if optimistic. Do you think that word, like, not that the word
optimism is in, you know,
yeah,
I think it is in that, but I would think that 2-sentence bio, I've been thinking about it a little bit. Just the fact that we're very opposite, you know, it's one of those things where we have like our goals line up, but who we are as people are so different. And where, you know, one's an extrovert, one's an introvert. You know, I'm more big picture. I would say you're more detail oriented, and different things like that. So it's like, it's that balance between the two.
Huh.
But I think that helps us make it through almost 24 years now.
So how did you guys come together? What was that like, finding of the yin and the yang? Like,
Yin and yang. Well, we first found each other. You want to tell?
No, go for it.
So we were both studying in college at Texas Tech University, and I was just going into my graduate studies portion there, and Tana was coming from interior design and going to an architecture minor. And so in order to do the architecture minor, she did a study abroad program in Italy, and I was doing the same one. And so it's like, you know, you go through all architecture school, undergraduate, knowing every single person, and you're together all the time. And so it's like, I showed up we had like every Thursday night or some night of the week, once every week, we'd get together at night with the instructor, and he would just kind of prep us for going over there. Because it was a summer program, like May through August. And so that whole spring semester, we were just prepping for it. All of a sudden there was a new person at the table.
Into the group.
Yeah. And so, we didn't really meet during that spring semester, but when we got over to Italy, we hit it off right away. So anyway, we studied over in Italy for 3.5 months, something like that. And for basically a semester, and we were engaged within less than a month.
Really? After Italy?
In Italy.
In Italy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so funny, you know, because I don't know if you've met my wife. She's an architect as well, but we started dating in Italy, the same thing, and it's just like something magical about that place.
It is.
Where'd you guys go?
So I used all my props while I was there. No, we studied in Vicenza, That was the main place that we were based out of.
Yeah, nice.
But we did like a 3-week tour as the whole group, from Milan down to Rome and then back up to Venice over a 3-week period, just staying at different places like Urbino and Gubbio and Assisi and Ravenna and different places like that. So that was, 2 minivan load, full of architecture students just jumping out and sketching every place we could.
That's amazing. After a month. So Tana, what was it? How do you guys know after a month? Well,
I don't know. Crazy. It was crazy.
Naivety.
Well, they all knew each other. They were the class and they all knew each other. And so I had developed a friendship with one of the girls before we left. We were in a different class together, but really, I was just knowing that I needed to get into architecture. I knew that the interior design program was missing something. And so just took this class, and it was funny, like joining the crew, because you definitely, like, they weren't all friends, but they knew each other. And so it was interesting, to say the least, for sure.
That's
but
funny.
It's one of those things where you're together almost 24 hours a day
24/7 we were together.
So it's not like, now it'd be like, okay, we went on a date, then a week later you're going, maybe 2 weeks later you're going on something like that. You were just together all the time, which you probably, you guys maybe done the same. So, but yeah, it was just one of those things that happened.
Which, it's interesting now, we are much better when we're together all the time than when we're not. So I don't know if that comes from that or if that's how we ended up together. I'm not really sure, like, which one was first, but I definitely know that when we're together all the time, we are much better off. We're much better together. Yeah, we kind of realize the strengths of each person. And
it's like our family hasn't left the house in a year, so we've been doing pretty good.
Yeah, that's funny. That's nice. I feel like most couples, it goes the other way with the pandemic. They're at each other's throats. But
no, we're just at the kids.
Yeah, I got the kids. But in that month time before you were engaged, did you collaborate on any projects? Like, had you gone through like a design collaboration through Fire before that? Or
I wouldn't say we weren't designing something together, but we both went over there to Italy with different backgrounds. And so I think it was interesting to see that when we were over there, we were forced to kind of learn who each other was and learn what our history was. And like, I can remember being in a couple of places where Brandon had really studied the space that we were in. And so he would go in and go, kind of tell me all the details. And I think it was just sort of that format really, or that space, gave us the opportunity to really dive into who each other was and what the history we had.
And just kind of appreciate what you had kind of retained out of your education so far, to study those things in books and then to go and walk through them and smell them and hear people walking through them and see what it sounds like and all those things, and to be able to share that with somebody for the first time about how it's Alberti's church within a church and those different things and stuff like that. That was really, really fun.
Yeah, it makes a difference when you're really sharing that with somebody. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So but we also got to see the day-to-day of each other too, so I think it was like we were dreaming about the future. We had something to force kind of who we had been studying, like what we had been interested in before, and just living day to day. I mean, you were seeing each other at breakfast, who was the first one down, you didn't want to be late to studio, you're walking to studio together, so like the nitty gritties of every day were also there. So
we'd travel every weekend.
Yeah.
We'd get off at on Thursday nights. That's when we wouldn't have class on Friday. And so we'd midnight hop on a train on Thursday and take off, and then be back on Sunday. And so we'd hit a different country every single weekend. So, you get to see a lot of each other when you're just trying to explore foreign languages and foreign places, and, figuring out who's good with directions and who's not,
Yeah. Did a particular kind of place or project really stick with you and kind of inform your work more, would you say?
I mean, the visit for me or the traveling for me definitely informed because I ended up doing my thesis over there. And so, yeah, that whole experience stuck with me for at least a year after that, just because I was doing my thesis on it for a year after that. So
What was the thesis on?
well, oddly enough, it was 5 different restaurants within Palladios Basilica in
Really?
Vicenza. Yeah. And so, I was really getting my head into phenomenology and so like what things taste like and smell like. And so, I worked my way through college in restaurants. And so that kind of culinary thing was always with me. Still is, obviously. And so, reading a lot of things from Stephen Hall, Gaston Bachelard, those guys, and just kind of going back to memories and stuff like that was always something that I would tap into. So,
Yeah.
Which I still do today.
And then Tana, so you started your architectural studies after that study abroad?
I had studied it before.
Oh, okay.
I had started, but
she kind of wrapped up.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was wrapping up.
Oh, kind of the end of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you talked about your backgrounds a little bit before, but did you also kind of share similar backgrounds growing up? Where did you guys grow up?
We shared, I would say, within the same region, basically.
In like Texas
like
or
Texas, yeah, kind of Panhandle / West Texas.
But I think that the
but totally different backgrounds.
Yes, totally different backgrounds.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I grew up in a very suburban, moving from house to house and doing things, the single mom type thing, where Tana had like a core family, 3 kids. I was, single kid. Tana grew up on a farm, all those things, So same region, totally different, background area.
Yeah.
Was it like Tana for you? Was it a clear path to like design, like interior design and then architecture?
Well, because I did come from that farmer sort of small town, my mother was really hesitant on it. She wanted me to be safe and wasn't so sure, I guess, about kind of getting out of the normal, out of her comfort zone. So I actually started out in education. And then I eventually was like, Mom, I can't do it. I have to go into design. And so I went into
this
interior
farmer
design.
mom had a daughter who wanted to like live in Manhattan and be an interior designer.
Yeah, that was my goal.
Wear scarves.
I wasn't going to get married. I was going to move to New York, and
I screwed that all up.
Yeah, right.
In 1 month, yeah. So was it a feeling of kind of being, I don't want to say trapped, but like just that opposite of the rural kind of setting and wanting to run from that?
Well, I think it's just the world is so big, and when you are living on a farm, like it's all right here. And I always had this feeling of like there's so much out there and there's so many opportunities and I want to see it all. I've always wanted to see it all. So it was just an exploration.
Yeah. So was Lubbock like an obvious stopping point for that, or I mean?
No, I didn't want to go there. My mother and dad were told. My dad went to Lubbock Christian, and then he went to Texas Tech, and that was the route that I went. I was expected to go to Lubbock Christian University, and then I could go to Texas Tech because it was right there in the comfort zone. No, in fact, I really wanted to go to North Carolina because I wanted to go into furniture design. And so one year I told my parents one summer, I said, I'm going to go, I really want to go to North Carolina. And so my mom said, okay, road trip. And so she packed us all up and we drove out to North Carolina, which doesn't sound like a lot nowadays, but then it was a huge undertaking. I mean, it was a big deal. And I got out there and my parents were like, we can't afford this. And so I was going to have to pay, and I was really close. I had 2 years left, maybe. Is that right? 2 years? I don't know. And so I just decided to finish out at Tech. And then instead of going I would go to the overseas. When I went and told my mother that I was going to go to Italy she looked at me and she goes, well, I ain't paying for you to go gallivant around Italy. And that was pretty much the mindset, she just really couldn't, she never could grasp the fact that I just always wanted to explore. And I mean, she loved me. She supported me totally. She just couldn't understand it. And so I ended up paying for myself to go to Italy because I was determined that I was not going to be a small town girl and that I was going to get out of Texas. And yeah.
It worked out. So then Brandon, for you, how'd you end up at Tech? I mean, there's so many architecture schools in Texas, right?
There are. Basically, I am a first generation college graduate, so I didn't have like someone there to tell me like, hey, this is the path you need to do. You need to do this step, and you need to do that step, and everything. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons, like for different students and different younger, interns and stuff like that, I try to be a mentor because I didn't have anybody within my family to kind of help with that. Right. And so I had to kind of lean on people outside of that. And so I can kind of see people who struggle with that. I understand it. But I didn't know.
But you had some really good teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say, like, he had
mentors
some really good mentorship and
Yeah.
some really good teachers along the way
Yeah,
that I think have really inspired him to be
exactly.
that mentor.
Yeah. And so that
Others.
was one of the things where, I was one of those typical kind of kids when you're 10 years old and people ask you, what are you going to do when you grow up? And architecture sounds like a good thing. And so I would just say that. And then I just haven't, changed.
You just stuck with it.
I just stuck with it. I just kept having the same answer. And I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what it was going to take to do that. And I didn't even know, I talked to so many students today that, I researched this and I determined this and I did that. I was like, I had no idea. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I just kept moving forward towards it and kept pushing the ball. And so certain things happened within my life. And then I ended up at, I was going to do architecture. I knew that. I did it in high school. Actually started drafting stuff like in junior high, and then went to high school. I was doing stuff and entering competitions and stuff like that in high school. And so that was like probably one of the biggest parts of who I was in high school was, that side of things. And so during some of those competitions, my mom knew one of the people who was a judge in one of them, and he mentioned to her, he's like, well, you should start doing some college stuff at night while he's in high school. And so I started doing actually back in the 80s, late 80s, doing CAD stuff in junior college.
Really?
Taking that. And so whenever it came time to graduate high school and go to college, there was my local junior college. I was already in it. So I never even had to get accepted into school because he had already got me into college. And so I just kept taking a couple of years there and got all my basics out of the way there and some other architecture projects. And then just kind of transferred all that stuff into tech. And just ended up knowing some buddies and stuff that were going there, and ended up being an awesome experience. Yeah.
So then you get back. So Tana, you get back from Italy and you're pretty much done. And Brandon, you have like a year left, sort of thing. And
yeah, basically.
You get married somewhere around there, and then
in between that time period.
And then graduate, and what happens? What's going on at that time?
We were going to go to one of two places. So as we looked at Philadelphia, we thought about going to Philadelphia just because we'd had just experienced all the stuff in Europe and train travel and being so connected to things, and just really enjoyed that. And so we were like, well, Philadelphia, it's right in the middle of everything on the East Coast. We could take a train up all the way up to Boston. We can go down to Washington, DC. I had done an internship on the East Coast while I was in school. And so that was interesting to me. She had wanted to go to New York, so the East Coast was interesting to her. So we took a vacation. That was like our research trip to see if we wanted to move to Philadelphia, which was our honeymoon. And so we did the whole New Year's thing in New York, and then we Stayed with a buddy of mine that I'd worked with in Connecticut. Stayed with him for a little bit and went down to Philly and traveled around. I think we really liked it.
Yeah, we
enjoyed
did.
it a lot. We just liked the urbanness of it, just because of where we'd come from, right?
Right.
It was just so different. And then a month or so goes by. I can't remember. Maybe a couple months go by, and then so we come to Denver to check it out. And Tana had a friend that was living here, and basically as soon as we drove in, she said she just looked at my face and she's like, "Well, I guess we're moving to Denver," because just the mountains and everything that Denver was at that time.
He never stopped smiling. And I remember we had come to Vail, and then we were driving to Denver, and I'm like looking at the cityscape and driving in, and I'm thinking, I don't want to live here. Like, look how flat it is. It's so flat.
It's just
You
like
know,
home.
I mean,
we
it was
just
just
go on,
like
yeah.
it was flat. And but I mean, he was smiling the whole time, and I was like, all right, this is where we're doing it, I guess.
Yeah, so we did. I think you were done with school. I was still in school, finished up grad school, and we just,
No, I don't think so.
you were still in?
You were in.
That's what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, you weren't in.
So I put
I don't
together.
know. This was a long time ago, Adam.
I know.
You're like
This is
making us go
20-something years ago.
back.
I always like this. I feel like people get prepared to tell their story, but when they actually come in here and tell it brings up all these things they haven't thought about. And
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I remember is like, she was like, "Okay, you do all the interviews, go get your interviews. I'll go find us a place to live and do that part of it." And so we kind of divide and conquered. And I set up like 13 interviews. Things were really hopping at the time. And
when was that?
98, end of 98.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I ended up, I was getting, again, it was because it was hopping, not because how great my portfolio was. The work was good. I didn't spend that much time putting it together. It's like a 3-ring binder or something.
You can always spend more time, right? It's
Yeah.
an endless pit of effort. Yeah.
Yeah. I just spent an afternoon doing portfolio. I was a guest lecturer on a portfolio review thing the other day, and I was thinking of my portfolio, and I'm like, you guys are doing great. But anyway, so yeah, I came and got a lot of offers, and she found us a great place to live. And yeah, we packed it up and moved as soon as I did like a fall graduation. So as soon as we wrapped up that, we were here beginning of 99.
So where'd you start working? Where'd you guys start working?
So my first place in Denver, I actually worked there for about 4 years, was at Park Hill Ivans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With Bruce Ivans?
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with him a lot. That's funny.
So, yeah, so they did that for 3.5 years. And there was a firm that I really had like researched and wanted to work for. And I, got the offer from Bruce and Bill. And I was just like, and I had a friend from college that was working there, and he's like, it's a fun office and stuff. And I, and at that time you're moving to Colorado. I really wanted to work on resort stuff, be up in the mountains. That's why I moved, we moved here. So we did a lot of that. And then the firm that I'd really wanted to work for, that was like a person who went to Texas Tech. And so I'd kind of followed him for a while, and he was doing really great work in Denver at the time. And I got to meet a lot of cool people working there. I ended up working there after, but he had offered me a job there right out of college, but I'd already taken the other one. And I just wanted to, I'd committed to them. They committed to me. So I was like, all right, let's do this. So, which Bruce and Bill, they gave me a lot more experience and responsibility than I ever deserved. But in the sink or swim scenario, I, fortunately swam and had a lot of great opportunities there. But about 4 years later, I ended up going to Michael Brendel's Architects and worked there with Tanya Salgado and Joseph and a number of other people. So that was a lot of fun going there. So, but yeah, Bruce, Park Hill Ivans was I met a lot of fun people there that I'm really good friends with now too. So that's a lot of good things came out of it.
And Tanya, what were you doing at this time?
I went to work for Oz Architecture.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. How long were you there?
About the same time.
About
4
the same
years.
You're
time,
looking
4
at Brandon,
years.
yeah.
Man, I
Yeah.
don't know, like
No,
4
we
years.
both
Yeah.
jumped ship at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's crazy, but I think we're both like, all right, let's try now something new.
Yeah.
And I was like, I always wanted to work for this guy, so I'm going to see what happens.
So then what'd you do after Oz then?
I went to work for Simple Brown.
Oh, really? Okay. Those are some good firms. What was Simple Brown like at that time?
I mean, it was good. I got to do a lot of great projects. I worked on Racines was the last one that I did. And, it's funny because Racines is one of those places where, you could see the mayor and your grandmother like right next to each other. And I feel like just the experience of kind of how to reestablish something that is so established.
Yeah, that was back in the day when it was a
Back in
totally
the
different
day.
place.
Oh, it was such a different place, but it gave me a really good foundation for restaurants.
And so then, did I see you guys work for Lake Flato?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
When was that?
it's funny because, when you were talking about like, we want to know about your story, I kind of go back to Lake Flato. I don't know why, like because that's where our first job that we were able to work together.
Uh-huh.
So we were living in California, kind of fast forward, we had moved to
Yeah. When is
California.
it? Wait. Yeah. What? Wait a second. Okay. So you're at Simple Brown and you're at Brindle, and then you moved to California.
There were multiple things in between that, but and I ended up so Brindle, all the library work just kind of went out for a while. So it's like 9/11 happens and all the development stuff goes down when all the public stuff is still doing well because of, it's kind of a reverse cycle when the economy goes in different ways. So Brendo, just kind of he came to me one day and he was great for me to work with. I really enjoyed it. But I had brought in a couple of projects that weren't typical to hit what he would, what they would do.
They were
But
smaller.
he came to me, they were smaller projects, but one was a restaurant and it was a previous client that I'd had. And then one was a residential project from one of the general contractors we were working with on another big project. And so he just came to me and said, hey, why don't you just go take these and do them on your own for a year and then come back and, we'll have some new stuff going. And I was like, okay, that's kind of crazy. But he gave me a lot of great advice kind of as I was doing that. And so I did that for a year. And then I came back and he was just like, yeah, there's libraries still aren't happening right now. So, so Tana had known that one of the people at Ross Shepherd was leaving and going to Simple. That was right at the same kind of, we're at the same level. And so I called up Ross Shepherd and basically it was funny. I joked that I, went in for the interview and they showed me to my desk and gave me my project and said, here you go, get going. Cause they had already talked to Michael Brendel. And so I didn't know I had it before I walked in, but I was like, I've got to go move my car. It's at a meter, And so that was a really fast interview. And I got to, that was probably one of my greatest mentors that I had there was Herb Roth.
Oh yeah.
He and I worked together, on so many different projects. So I was working on the LAPD headquarters at the time. I was working on 2 different other police stations in LA. So I was flying back and forth to LA like every other week. And then Tana had always she loves California and the beach. And so there was like this cycle of Denver to LA to San Diego, back to Denver, and just kind of going like that for a while. And then finally I was like, you know what, we're just moving to California. So did that. And Tana worked for a couple different firms there, interior firms.
In California.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time that I said, okay, I'll be here too, I took actually, you had asked like, did you ever think of a time where you might leave the profession?
Yeah.
You had mentioned something like that. At that point, she was like, I was writing an email every day, each week, with just different recipes and stuff because I like to cook and I'm always kind of in that culinary portion. And she was like, all right, well, this is your moment. If you want to go to culinary school, this is it. I took like 3 months off and thought about it, and actually finished studying for my exam and finished my exam then, sitting on the beach. And I was just like, you know what, I can see what they have to do. And now that we do a lot more restaurants, I see even more of what they have to do and the sacrifices they make and everything for their families and stuff. I see the joy they get out of it too, but I was just like, no, I'm going to stick with this. So I had that brief moment where I thought about it, but not sure if it was I came to my senses or if I should have jumped in. Anyway,
I guess it's not too late, right? I mean,
yeah.
It
So anyway,
is.
so that's when we
it
were.
is too late. It is.
We had two.
Remember we tried that.
We
did that for a little bit.
It's too late.
Yeah.
That's another chapter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so while we were there, we were living right next to the beach in San Diego, and I came across a house that had a flyer on it, and it was a dump of a house, and it was like $1,000 a square foot. And I put it on the refrigerator when she got home, and she's like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "It's my ticket out of here. Like, we're moving somewhere. Let's start picking." So that's when we went to Lake Flato.
But you didn't go straight away.
Yeah, we moved back to Texas. We thought we were going to go to Austin. San Antonio at that time had the firms that matched with our goals and values. And we were at that time talking about, having kids and the family and stuff like that. And so whenever I got to San Antonio and interviewed with both Lake Flato and a group named Overland Partners.
Oh yeah.
Just Overland Partners, there's something there resonated with me. They were a very kind of Christian oriented firm, value-based firm, all these different things. And I was just like, I don't know, for some reason, I feel like, Lake Flato was like the obvious choice. So we were, that's where I thought I was going to go, but
he would go interview in Austin. And he had like the long list of places he was going to go. And so he'd go interview at Austin, and they'd be like, okay, well, where all are you going? And he'd start listing off, and he'd go in Lake Flato. They're like, well, you'll enjoy San Antonio. Like they all knew he was going to go to Lake Flato.
Yeah. My portfolio was better than too.
That's so funny. I was just at a conference last week and had a great lecture by Rich Archer.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
They're good people. They really are.
And just the work too is very, very strong and thoughtful.
Yeah. Rick's very thoughtful. That's like the word I was looking for. Thoughtful about just the work, life, how you treat people, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they are and still good. They were and still are good friends. But as I was working there, it was about 9 months into it, and there were some frustrations I was having, which you always do in a new place. But Tana was like, you know what? She had chosen Lake Flato. She got offers at both as well.
Nice.
So she went to Lake Flato. I went to Overland, and she just told me one night, she was like, they're looking for somebody at your level. She's like, all these people over here like you. she's like, I just feel like you'd fit in. And so I interviewed again and went for it, and it was a fantastic decision. I joke with people, it was like going to grad school all over again. Just being there for the few years that we were there, you learn so much stuff. You learn about the poetics of things, about contextuality, and just other ways that you can't. You would never learn it in college like that. Just the way that you're doing it, and you're working with David and Ted and seeing the humility that they have. Because I think of architects, it's easy to have egos, and especially whenever you're published as much as they are, and they just won National Firm of the Year before we started, and
and they'd had some really growing pains with that,
which I think that's what I've heard with a lot of firms, which
happens.
So they were kind of looking back at themselves and who are we and what do we want to become and stuff like that, but just like building models all the time, they would, and then just down on the floor, having the model on the table with David Lake, and just looking through there, and just kind of like, he didn't care to get down on the floor. He wants to do whatever it takes to make the project as good as it's going to be, and just had really fantastic relationships with them, Bob Harris, just so many people.
Their lunch and learns, like right now, you'll have lunch and learn, and it's to learn about windows, you know, and it's just
roof flashing.
Roof flashings, you know. But at Lake Flato, we had lunch and learns where the rendering master in the firm,
Matt Morris, would give watercolor
he would just teach classes, and so we would all just learn how to do watercolor together. And I mean, it was just beautiful. Like, they really just beautiful. Yeah. That's what they think of architecture, and that's what they really try to create, a space that's beautiful. Yeah. And really appreciating the inherent values that materials have. And it was something like you just don't see in the practical measures of architecture.
I always tell people, like, I mean, everybody's amazed at the work they do. I mean, it's beautiful things. And they feel rooted in their place and stuff like that. But the people that work there are like the better part of the firm, more than the projects. So,
I mean, because I think that's like the ideal place to end for any firm, right? Is being that kind of level, right? And having the ability to create that work. But we all want it, but it's like, what's that secret sauce to get it there, right? And I feel like, you know, firms can be super thoughtful and make a lot of models and not survive from a business point of view, right? It seems like such a hard balance to have. And I guess, what made it work? Is it the people just being able to grab the best of the best that mesh and that with that humility? Or
I think that, I mean, they obviously draw great talent just because of who they are. I mean, we studied them in college and just understood kind of like how they made places to a degree. And then losing my train of thought here, but I think that the fact that what I was going to say is the fact that all of them are there in San Antonio together, and they're not exactly like the typical demographic in San Antonio. There's fantastic culture in San Antonio, but they're a little bit different. You know, it's kind of like they all just kind of go a little bit different way, and it sets them all apart, and it kind of binds them all together. I think that they would, you know, they have an Austin firm now, and I'm curious what it's like, because they're always just pushing against the grain, I feel like, and trying to make San Antonio so much richer and so much better. Just because they see it, I feel like they see it differently than some other people do. And so I do think the fact that we were, you know, when we were there, we were all like each other for the most part, you know, or had similar values and stuff like that. And therefore we were always together all the time. And no one, like, you know, not that many people really came in at 8 and left at 5. Or even if they did, you go out to happy hour together. You do all the stuff together. We had our own cycling team, and, you know, made our own jerseys and all kinds of stuff. They still, even the people that don't work there anymore, they still do that stuff. So yeah, I think it's their own community within the office. But then at the same time, they're making that community so much richer. And so, yeah, it was that kind of special sauce, or probably still is. I know we went back there last year. They were still doing the watercolors at lunch.
Yes.
You know, but yeah, it's a special place.
So that was a special place, but then you left. So what was that decision? Was Denver next, or?
You want to tell this story?
No, go for it.
We were talking about this the other day, because you had asked about, you know, if there's any like famous people, famous architects, famous clients you've had or whatever. The main and first project we got to work on together was there. And we did the Lance Armstrong Foundation. And this is before Lance had his fall from grace. Fell off the podium, but so he was still kind of the man at that time. And we're there working on the project and multiple meetings with him, stuff like that. He treated us fantastically. And I know there's other stories with other people, but he treated us fantastically every time we were with him. And so it kind of had a little bit of a bond there going with it. And one day we'd been struggling for a few weeks I think we were expecting our daughter, Olivia, at the time. And we're like, okay, so we're going to stay here, or we're going to go back to Denver? Because anybody that knew me back then knew that I wanted to be
And
in
I mean, we
Colorado.
were really early on pregnant though,
Yeah.
with that when we,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
but yeah, so I don't know if anybody knew, but we were
Yeah.
still like kind of working through those ideas. Is this where we're going to raise our family or not? Right. And so we're sitting in a meeting with Lance, and he mentioned something about some place in Austin and this place in Austin. We're like, yeah, we're not familiar with that. And he's like, how do you not know that? It's like the best burgers in town or whatever, something like that. And he goes, I forget you guys are in San Antonio. And then he just kind of looks at Tana. He's like, why are you in San Antonio? And she's like, I really don't need this from you. She's like, I'm struggling with that right now. And now you're asking me.
I mean,
so
it
yeah,
was
that
one of those moments where I was,
It made for a long ride home back
yeah,
to San Antonio from
really,
Austin.
it was hard. Because we loved the people, we loved the firm, the food. But
I hated
we
the heat.
missed Denver. We really missed the culture, and it was so hot, and he was miserable in the heat, and we missed outdoors, the lifestyle. And everybody's like, oh, you can go outside in Austin, but it wasn't the same because it's so hot. So anyway.
So we were 7 months along, and what do we do? Are we going to do this or not? So we just kind of said, well, we prayed about it. We put our house on the market, and we said, if it's going to happen, the house needs to sell within the next 2 weeks.
If the house sells in these 2 weeks, we'll move. If not, we're staying here.
Yep. So we put the house on the market, and it sold like the next weekend over asking price.
And that was the weekend that the stock market crashed.
Yeah.
Like
this was 2008.
It was
October 2008.
Huh.
It was that weekend. We went on a baby boom. Realtor was at the house. We landed, and all of a sudden we turn on the TV, and it was like the crash, and we were like, okay, well, I guess we'll just enjoy it here and then go back and live in San Antonio.
Yeah, but it sold.
And it sold, and we knew it was God for sure.
Yeah, so
you're like, okay, God, yeah. And
Yep.
so you're like, okay, it's sold. Let's move in this downturn, and let's start a firm. Let's do it.
We didn't start a firm. I had actually, during that whole time in San Antonio, I kept in touch with Herb Roth. He actually got his FAIA while we were there, whenever they had the national convention in San Antonio. And so, we got to celebrate that with him, and he and I kept in touch the whole time. I'd come up to Denver and go skiing with them and stuff like that. So it was, it's one of those things where things are crashing, but he had a lot of publicly bonded police stations and stuff like that. And so we moved back, and
he had been, wanting Brandon to move, or asking if Brandon wanted to move back. And so we just felt like this was the time to do it. And I mean, David took us into the conference room. David Lake took us into the conference room, and he sat down, and he was just, he was upset. He was like, you don't know what's about to happen. And I mean, I'm bawling like ugly ball. And he like looks at Brandon, and he's
huge
like,
houses for like the president of Goldman Sachs and stuff. They know what's happening.
They know what was
How bad it
happening.
is.
David did. And we were just like, I'm sorry, David. This isn't home for us. And
the firm was, but the place wasn't.
Yeah, the city wasn't.
Yeah. So I came back and worked for Ross Shepard again for like another 3 years or so.
But did you always have that idea of starting a firm together? Like, when did that start?
I think we
like, when did the idea start? Yeah.
We talked about it in school, and then we didn't, and then we did, and then we both talk about kind of like whose idea.
We don't know really.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So when we had just when Brandon moved to California, he was kind of helping a friend that was doing a house. And the funny story on that is that, so he says, well, I'm doing this house for our friends. And I'm like, oh yeah. And we're, we weren't sure about designing with each other at this point. And so he said, well, I want to show it to you. And I said, okay. And so I'm like looking at it, and I'm in my mind, as the wife, I'm going, okay, how do you respond that's sensitive, and yet like I'm walking on eggshells a little bit, like on new ground.
It was a little too, harsh and avant-garde. It wasn't as poetic as like a Lake Flato thing at that time. It was before Lake Flato.
Yeah. And so I said, well, what if you did this? And so and kind of reworked it. I mean, we reworked it completely. And it was kind of funny.
What if you make this little change and crumple up everything and
and start over? Yeah, we left this. The idea is it has a silo on it, and we left that idea.
Yeah,
it has a silo on it.
It's in Amarillo, Texas. It's out. It's kind of off the highway, and it's a farmhouse definitely. So it still had that silo.
Yep.
Yeah,
we kept the silo.
That's funny. I'm constantly, I have the thinner skin for sure with Becca, and I'll get real upset and say, oh, no, that was good. And then it's always like half hour later, I look at it and no, yours is better. Yeah. You were right. So then, yeah, how did Live start?
So we had some friends that we went to church with that I think we were having like our daughter's 1-year birthday party, and they came over. They had a 1-year-old as well. And he kind of pulls me to the side and he's like, hey, we're going to be moving to Montana. And
we didn't know him really. I mean, it was a brand new church, really.
Yeah.
We just invited him because it's like, why not? Get to know people.
And so he was just picking my brain, and he was like, should I hire an architect? Should we just have a builder do it? And I was like, I don't know. Is this someplace you're going to live forever? Or is it just someplace that you're going to kind of build and then move to another place? Because he was just graduating from college. He's like, well, her family's owned the property for like 8 generations, and it's right in front of Glacier National Park, and it's all this stuff. And I was like, so you're probably going to be here for a while. I'm like, then you want it to be your house, not somebody else's, right? And so I was like, yeah, you should probably hire an architect. And then he was like, well, could you guys do it? And I was like, well, we're not really a thing, but maybe we could be. And so we talked about it, and that was basically the genesis of LIVstudio, was starting that house up in Montana, which, I mean, it's been fantastic to see their kids grow up in it and different things like that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So did you quit at that time, Brandon? And
no, I still have my day job.
Yeah.
Tana had taken time off to raise Olivia, and so she was doing it. So she started LIVstudio. And yeah, I would just kind of look over her shoulder. So no, I'd go up on the weekends for CA stuff like that.
And so then
and go skiing.
Yeah. Not a bad setup. So then what was the second project then? It's always interesting, like that, the first project for people, and how long sometimes it can take, or if it just happens, but then it's like, what happens next?
Yeah. So that second project was the interesting one. So remember when I left Brindle and I had that restaurant project? So that same client, we were wrapping up the house in Montana, and I was kind of coming to the end of my time at Ross Shepherd. I was looking to do something else, and one day I just called Tana up and said, I'm done. I've got to move on. I've got to do something else. Let's do this whole LIVstudio thing. Let's just take it and run with it. She's like, well, when do you want to do that? I'm like, I want to turn in my notice now, And so she's like, oh, I know you do, but I was like, something will happen. It'll work out. And that's the eternal optimist in me. And so I turned in my 2 weeks and wrapped up, stuff with projects and everything the day before my last day. So my last day was going to be on a Friday. It was on a Friday. The Thursday, that restaurant tour that I'd done on my own after Brindle's office called me up and says, hey, do you want to do another restaurant? And I was like, I won't be doing it through Ross Shepherd. And he's like, well, I've never worked, you've only worked with you. So he said, can you be here on Monday? I just signed the lease. So I never had a day off. We just started that one. And then
what was that one? What restaurant?
It's not around anymore. Restaurants, that's just what happens. But it was up in Genesee. So it's just a little, it was a nice restaurant for the time that it was there. But yeah, I think it's a barbecue place now. But yeah, we did that one. And then another friend of ours that you knew from San Diego had, moved back to here. She grew up here. She had some friends she knew that were starting a restaurant. She recommended us, and it just kept going.
Well, and that's where we did, that's Weston Tap House. And that was where we did our first DigiFab.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that was our third project that we did. And that's really who I think we wanted to be. We wanted,
explore things.
We wanted to be this firm that was trying new things. We'd come from Lake Flato, that is very much about timelessness and timeless architecture. And while we value that and love that, that's not always sustainable in restaurant design. And so I think it was just this idea of both of those two things, like how can you make something beautiful and still exploratory and cutting edge and, forward thinking.
Yeah. And I tried to, push a couple of digital fabricated projects when we were when I was at Ross Shepherd there at the end, and just they didn't come to fruition, not necessarily because the firm wasn't going there, but it just didn't happen. And so I was like, well, maybe we can make this happen on this project. And so we pitched it to the client, and they totally went for it. And we ended up having to, since at that time, giving just files to a GC to do some digital fabricated waffle slab stuff, their head would just kind of explode, and they'd look at you and they'd put like just times 10 on the price, and so we were like, well, we'll just build it ourselves.
Yeah,
because
it's just plywood.
Again,
it's just I mean, these guys, they were just bartenders and they wanted to own their own bar, and
so they trusted us.
But they didn't have a lot of money.
No.
They're starting out.
Yeah, they're doing great now still. So they're one of those that have stood the test of time, just because they're good people. I think
they're good people.
And so we built it ourselves, and it was crazy, and all the stuff we went through to do that. And then another one down the street, we ended up building it ourselves. It just we decided after that one, we let the contractors build it. We knew what to give them now.
Yeah.
So
pretty much they were putting together small batch and the one down the street, and they were like, okay, this is it. We're not doing this again. We're paying people to do it.
We did small batch. That was right when I hired Adam Steinbach to work with us. And so he and I worked on that, and we breathed in a lot of fumes of stuff we probably shouldn't have.
He's going to be on the show in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So did you guys have those kind of digital skills at the time, or were you bringing in people to kind of help you, or were you teaching at that time as well? Or?
So Adam had been one of my students at University of Colorado, Denver. Whenever I taught there, I was teaching there when I was at Ross Shepherd. So he was one of my students. But I'd found another student that I hadn't taught, but I knew of his skills. And so I knew what we wanted to do. And so I brought him in, and he and I worked on all of it together. And so he was super helpful.
He was a good kid. I mean, we've had the opportunity to
have some really great
good. Yeah. Good collaborations.
Is that the thing, like that Lake Flato kind of thing, of trying to get really good people that come in, and especially when you're a small firm, right? It's a big difference who you bring in and how it.
That's one of the hardest parts. That's one of the hardest parts in growing a firm and in trying to maintain kind of like the culture of a really small firm. I think maintaining a culture of a larger firm like Lake Flato, it just kind of it gets set, and that machine kind of runs, and those certain people make sure that they tweak it and make sure it's running the right way. If you're like a 4-person firm and you hire somebody, that's going to change your culture by 25%.
Right.
And so it's hard to maintain that same culture that you had, 6 months before or something. So, that's just.
But I think, to your point, that really was the mindset. We really looked at Overland and Lake Flato and wanted the path for LIVstudio to coincide with their values and the character and the personality. Because there is such a great personality at Lake Flato, and we treasure that. And I don't think a lot of people get to experience that in a professional setting. And so that was our goal for sure.
and then through that whole thing of like when you're working for somebody else, you've got more time to mentor people. You got more time to kind of be like a project manager who's working with this person day in and day out, mentoring them. You need to watch for this. You need to put this on drawings, all kinds of things. And when you own a firm, it's harder to mentor people, you know? And so I think that as we were growing, I got up to like 6 or 7 at one point. And I was still on every project. You were still on every project for the most part. And it's just hard to have that kind of those teaching moments and mentoring. And I was kind of missing that. And I think that that's where kind of in the last few years, we've kind of shifted and shaped it so that I could teach more, so that I could kind of be in that role again. And I just take joy and, out of that. It's just kind of the part of who I am. So now actually I'm on faculty at CU Boulder. And so, I'm not adjunct anymore or anything like that, popping in and out. I'm actually in staff meetings and all kinds of stuff.
So it takes up even more time then.
But we've made it a conscious decision to it. Now it hasn't just happened. We planned it out. So actually now is probably the best moment, I think, in our careers.
Because you're able to, I do adjunct stuff at Denver, and it's so hard to squeeze that in mentally and time wise, and so now, so you've just kind of dedicated that chunk, to there, and kind of adjusted.
And you're
that
part
just
of the
amount of projects you bring in, and
and I think we adjusted the size of the firm to adjust to the size of the number of projects, probably. But actually, I think business is more kind of successful now than at different levels of success. Our happiness is success.
When you can figure out how to focus on what you want and get there instead of seeing kind of size or success, I guess.
So we had at one point when we had 6 or 7 people, we were like, we're still kind of a small firm. We get to pick and choose, which projects we want to, or just we get to work with great people. And a lot of times there's a lot of great people that are still coming to us, but we just didn't have time for it. So we'd have like 30 projects, and our head would be spinning doing that. For some people, they can do that really well. But for us, what we were putting into it, it was difficult. And so now, if we can take on 2 or 3 projects and really put in, quality effort, quality time with our clients, build quality relationships and stuff like that, to us, that's a higher level of success for us. I know it's not like that for every firm, obviously, but that's just kind of the conscious effort we've taken.
Yeah. So I'm interested in, it's such a rich background in so many firms. And it's funny because on LinkedIn, it's like, I think you have like 2 firms listed or something. And it's this whole story is so much richer than I was expecting. And so you have all these experiences in these places in Italy, and you start the firm, and it seems like, you have these certain ideas of kind of like how to run a firm like Overland or kind of this kind of digifab kind of stuff. What do you have a project that you think like best kind of instills all that background in theory into it? Like, have you had a success in your mind, like a peak success?
I hope not a peak yet. I hope there's one coming up soon. But there's ones that stand out, definitely. I know that within one thing that we both enjoy, and one thing that was kind of part of my thesis was those layers of a building and layers of history of a building. And the idea, one of the things that we talk about a lot internally is that we're not a firm that feels like we need new buildings all the time. And so we get pulled into, or just by happenstance maybe, but I think pulled into adaptive reuse projects more, just because we really appreciate older buildings. I had a minor in historic preservation in college. I worked for the Historic Building Survey up in Connecticut, And so just really just kind of getting to know older buildings, but then how to do contemporary interventions within those. And so I think that, like, we'll just kind of get to work with the building and listen to the building and figure out what the building really is over a sense of time. And Tana one day, I think, coined it best, where she's like, the more you listen to the building, it'll like reveal itself. It'll tell you what it wants to be, And so going through a process of just peeling that and really trying to understand the right moves to make in a building. We had a great opportunity with the Studio Como project that we did, furniture store down in Rhino. I think that was a really good one. We had some good, we were doing digital fabrication stuff. We have a 30-foot by 30-foot steel wall that was water jet cut. It's like a map of Denver, kind of an abstract map of Denver. So that was a fun one to figure out how to do that. But then that led to the Denver Central Market, and which, we love that because it just captures kind of what we feel is the soul of that neighborhood. People, there's been different souls of that neighborhood, but it definitely, it was a catalyst, at least I say. And it wasn't trying to be something that people have different opinions of what the neighborhood is, but I think that it's definitely taken off and been successful because it's not trying to come in and be too slick, too modern, or try too hard. So,
well, yeah. And then speaking of that building, so tell me more about Greenlight Lab, and because your office was in there, right? And that's where we first met once,
Yep.
Brandon, and I got a little tour of the office.
Yep.
But it was such a cool thing. How'd that come about, and what happened?
So at the time we were officing out of Studio Como. We were we kind of carved out a space for ourselves when we were doing the project. Always a fun thing to do as an architecture firm, to make your own space. And we had taken a trip to New York for Thanksgiving, just to kind of take the kids and do all things Thanksgiving in New York one year. And we'd been looking for new space because we'd been down kind of in that garden level, I'll say, at Studio Como.
And the thing about, he kind of breezed by this, but with Studio Como, it's really interesting because the owner had come to us and said, hey, the space is big. Why don't you guys carve a space? And so we had decided that we would take this corner over here,
Which was a great corner.
Which was a great corner. And, but it was still in the lower level, but it was nice. Yeah. And, but then there was a space of the building that we had made some changes to the design, and we were like, okay, there's this space back here. Like, let's make it where if our office was in there, we want to make it.
Before that was the least desirable portion.
It was the least desirable, yes. And so let's make it a space that people want to be in. And so we ended up taking that space because we're like, that's right. Like, you make a space, even if it's the least desirable, like, we want you to want to be there, and it ended up, it was a great space for us. We had a lot of great things.
Absolutely. It was really defining kind of our culture at the time. We had awesome charrettes. We had a place built for charrettes and all that stuff.
Oh, it was so fun. That was really fun. Yeah.
But then we were looking for a new space because we were kind of growing out of it. I wanted to maybe have a little more street frontage and stuff like that. So we knew, so we went to New York, and we're doing all things for the kids and stuff, being tourists. And then one night we went out, just the two of us together, and we're sitting in a little cocktail bar, typical New York neighborhood cocktail bar. It's really quiet. Or not quiet, but you can still at least hear yourselves talk, which in most places in Denver at the time you couldn't. And so we were like, Tana made the mistake of saying, you know what, if we ever had a cocktail bar, I want something like this, something that we could hear each other talk. The drinks are good. The lighting's just right, all this stuff. And she says, all I heard was we could have a cocktail bar.
It's true.
But at that time I was like, well, there's this one space coming up, and we knew, it's one of our clients, and we knew about it before others. And I was like, it's set up perfect where we could have a studio in the front and then have this little cocktail bar
party in the back.
And have it come off the alleyway. And it was kind of, it didn't stop from there.
But it's so funny because the green light sort of process to get green light was, we had said, okay, well, maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do this. And so we kind of talked it through and put some performa together, and we're thinking about things. And the owner, the client, or the owner wasn't really responding. Like, he wasn't sure he wanted to give the space to us, you know? And
so we kind of were like, all right.
Okay. And so we said, I told Brandon, I said, okay, we needed a new car. And I said, okay, we're going to get this new car if we don't get the space. But if we get the car, we're not doing green light. Like, it was that or the other. And so we had this talk with the owner, and it was like, no, we're not going to do the space, because he wanted to do something else, which was totally fine, you know. But he wanted to pursue another avenue. And so we were like, okay. So we bought the car. I kid you not, the next day he calls us up and goes, that's it, let's do it.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea, let's do it. And I'm like, no, we bought the car. It's in the garage. Like,
keep the receipt.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, true story about life. I feel
before
like.
Greenlight, we'd been looking at other spaces and actually thinking about doing stuff that had kind of like art gallery associations with it, that had a liquor license, that could be more like having events within it, and have our studio kind of at the back of it or something, so that we could kind of have some more community involvement.
Yeah,
at that time.
Really, we wanted community involvement. That was the goal with Greenlight. Was we wanted a space that could be activated by others, could be used by others. We wanted a space that we could test things out for our clients. You know, we have a lot of first-time clients that are doing a restaurant, and we wanted to use it as an educational space in some ways. And we also wanted to use it as an experimental space. Yeah. So, I mean, we really had a balance between what we wanted to do. Right? I mean,
it was a sense of exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got to explore all the time back there. And then there were a lot of times where we would have a restaurant that was opening up, but, you know, as most projects, you know, a lot of projects just kind of something happens, and then they'd already hired people, but now it's 2 weeks before they're going to get to open, and they're paying these people. And so we would have like a little kind of pop-up. I think people really weren't doing pop-ups yet, and I don't know if they were not.
Yeah.
But anyway, we do a little pop-up with them, and they would get to promote themselves before they even got open. And they would be like, their drinks are going to be, and then they get feedback on their drinks and different things like that. And their bartenders and servers would get to work a little bit. And so it was fun to let our clients explore too within the space. Yeah. So we got to do that a few times, which was fun.
I thought it was great. I mean, just the space felt so good. The drinks were amazing. I think you came out with like a spherical ice cube that got cracked open with a hammer, and smoke came out, and it was
I miss that.
And it was so good. And just the idea of sort of having, you know, in my head, like this other income source for an architecture firm seems great, but I guess you also have the other headaches of another business as well, probably. So like, what happened? Is that what brought it down?
No, that's not. No, actually, whenever we sold it, it was doing better than it ever had, and had been for weeks and months. It's just been kind of going up and up and up and up. And our staff that we had on board was, you know, the best staff we'd had. A lot of fun, very creative, taking care of things. We didn't really have to really be there and manage it that much anymore. So the idea of it was the best it had ever been, but we were just always kind of looking over our shoulder. Is it going to always be like this? You know, it's just it. And so, we had a lease that was, you know, we had 3 more years, and we were like, well, in 3 years, we'll do this with our life. In 3 years, we'll do this with LIVstudio. In 3 years, we'll do. And then we had our next door neighbor, the jazz club. They had been planning a new space, and their thing fell through. And I saw that in the business journal. And so I called her up, and I was like, have you found anything new? She's like, no. And I was like, well, do you want something closer to home? And she just started laughing. She's like, I wanted that space before you got it. and our place never had a kitchen, so we just had really small bites and stuff. They're able to utilize the kitchen next door and bring that stuff in. So it's really better suited for them. And then we got to do all those things that we said we were going to do 3 years from then.
So what are those things? What's next?
Maybe, I guess, I don't even know what they were now, but now it's
Yeah.
teaching. So I guess I joke that I never can have one job. So before I had those two, and now I've still got two, but
we had a big, I feel like we had a big purge year where we just mentally, we had been running so hard. I think about all the projects that we've done in our time, and it was quite a list.
yeah.
And I think we were just exhausted. We were kind of running a little on fumes. We needed to slow down a little bit. And we just started purging. And that just meant for us just kind of cleaning house, a little bit. And simplifying. We really were searching for how we could find a good balance. And my running joke is that God took our purge one step further, and he purged the bar, because we didn't intend to sell the bar. In fact, when we were packing it up, I'm like crying, going, are you sure? Are you sure this is what we should do? And
we just got named top 20 gin bar in the world.
Yeah.
right after we'd made our agreement with the people next door. And it's like, are you sure you want to do this?
Are we sure? But it was right. It was good. But it was not on, we didn't know it was the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's cool to hear that it's like you guys are at a good running point right now. Like, and do you see that being able to kind of sustain for the future, or are you going to get bored and start ramping it up again? Or, do you know what that looks like?
We never seem to do the same thing from year to year, so I have no idea what it looks like. I feel like with the current clients that we have right now, that the next year or two look good. So like I said, it's a really good time.
And I think the pandemic has really taken us to a new space as well. I think the world is not the same as it was. And even imagining what it will be after is kind of hard at this point, especially considering, most of the clients that we have are, and the clients that we love so much are restaurants, and we just have so many great people in our life, I feel like, from those relationships.
Yeah. That's the best part of what we do.
Yeah. And it's, it's so hard too, because they're extreme as well, I have to say, like, that's the fun of it, really.
Yeah.
So
they work hard, and they kind of I don't know if they expect that, but they that's what they see. That's just normal life to them. Yeah. So you don't set a schedule that's just like you would on a police station.
A lot more ups and downs.
A lot more just push through and go hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they expect a lot of fun things, and they expect you to come up with fun ideas, and they expect you to come up with things that they would never. When people walk into a space and they're just kind of like, the hell's going on here? They expect that out of you, and so you can't phone it in.
Yeah, you can't phone it in. No.
So, but you can come up with an amazing narrative, and it helps their business. You come up with an amazing narrative on a police station, and it helps you as an architect.
Yeah, this holds people in better. Yeah. These bars equal. Yeah.
So
well, cool. We go to the same church, but we really haven't really met that much, and
exactly.
I just love doing this podcast because I get to really an excuse to connect with you guys, especially. You were kind of top of the list, and it's fun, with Rebecca and I kind of looking up to you guys and how you've formed your studio and the work that you do, and how you teach as well. And so appreciate it.
Fun.
Thanks for coming on.
It's been fun following the podcast.
Yeah.
Just going in, and then also seeing like other people that I've worked with or friends that I have and stuff like that, go back and listen to see what Joseph's doing.
Yeah.
I actually first time I started teaching at CU was with Rick when he was at Boulder. So
oh, really?
He and I taught a class together. So
well,
it was a lot of fun.
We've talked all along that architects don't really support each other very well. Yeah. And we really appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely.
just this idea of supporting each other. I think this world could use a little bit more supporting each other.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, especially in architecture, I mean, it's hard, but it's fun because a lot of the firms will be going for a project and it's like we're against the same people, and it's like, oh yeah, well, we know them, we used to work there, or we used to work with them, or we're good friends with them, and but you never see them anymore, like we may hear about them, but you just don't see people.
Yeah, you get busy
Yeah.
and you get
Mhm.
You do, but you see their work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so like there's firms
It's
that we're just
fun.
like, well, we know that we're going up against them because we pretty much do every time. And they'll tell us, and we're like, yeah, those are great guys.
They're great guys.
Yeah.
They're great people.
They kind of the clients get taken back. They're like, wow, they said the same thing about you. I'm like, that's good. That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you for listening to this week's show.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
I don't remember what to say.
So where
I
you
was
guys
going to say,
at now?
I feel like I've listened to a number of them. I usually kind of handpick because I'm friends with Brad Tomchek, and I know Rick really well, and Joseph and stuff. So I'll kind of handpick those, and you're getting a lot better.
Yeah, I know.
It just happens naturally, right? It's just what it is.
And like I said before, in the beginning, I was so freaked out. I was trying to get it perfect, and it took me 8 months, and I was trying to edit this thing, and it was like, finally, I just got to do it. And when I'm excited for you guys, did you record this on your end? Yeah, awesome. So I think this is the first one that I'm actually going to get that and splice the audio together, and I think that the audio will be quite a bit better.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll hear my phone dinging constantly here.
I didn't hear it.
Okay.
Oh, good.
And the funny thing is, Becca is just in the other room, and she had a meeting, and so I'm in our coat closet, and I literally went and took our son's twin mattress, and she shoved it against the door on this side, and so I'm like, I don't even know if I can get out right now, really.
That's so funny.
Awesome.
But yeah, because you didn't hear her in a meeting, did you?
No.
Okay,
No.
good.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Maybe we put another mattress up there. I don't know.
The things that we do right now.
Right.
Yeah. We've got 2 offices here in the house. She's got one up the stairs, and I've got this one here, and and I'll be in here teaching the class, and my son's in the room next door, playing on his Oculus and running around screaming at other kids and stuff like that. I'm just like, we named our company after our kids, so
Yep.
Which is funny because she's not the one who would ever go into architecture, and our son is the one who I could see it.
Well, we used to have the big sign up that had LIVstudio at one of our big projects, and we were driving up to it one day, and Z goes, "Hey, where's my sign?" And so when we named Greenlight, it was Z's Greenlight Lab. No one really knew the Z, but if you looked everywhere, like there were little Z's everywhere, and it was because that was our son's Greenlight Lab. Yeah, it was Z.
He had put on an apron. He'd go back there, and he'd
shake.
juice lemons and stuff like that. Now when he comes home, he's got the shaker, and he's making his own.
He's making the spheres and like.
Oh, I saw that, and the candles, right?
Yeah,
those candles they made. Those are cool. Yeah, it's like. He's like, sister, you can have the architecture firm. I'm taking the cocktail bar. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's kind of funny.
I always say, and then Tana has to remind me that I say it because I end up doing it too. But I heard a quote the other day of the comparison is the thief of all joy.
Yeah.
And that goes with social media. And she had to call me out on it the other day. She's like, how you say that?
And you don't know it's robbing you. I think that's the thing is because I think it's robbing you of this joy of creating just a really great story, worrying or thinking about, because, our story is interesting because we have an early Denver and then we have an after, and those are 2 separate Denvers. So we could probably talk an hour on Denver before.
First chapter.
Our first chapter, right? Our first book. And then we've got this latest book and it's a whole different Denver, but the players kind of, interact. The same people, but it's interesting to think about, I think, time.
Mhm.
And I don't think I really,
Especially when we have so much of it.
yeah, right.
At the same time, she runs everything, so I could pull back my. I'm just riding her coattails. So
Yeah, that's a good.
We're a good team. You know, that whole balance of he
yeah,
takes care of his portion and I take care of my portion. And that's really how we have
yeah,
success, I feel like, is we can come together, but we each know our
and
role.
respect what each of the other one does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And we know we're better together. You know, I mean, we're better when we are spitballing things and we throw them up on the wall and see what sticks. And it's kind of one of those.
I'm gonna check on that engineer real quick.
Oh, okay.
They're submitting drawings right now,
Yeah,
so I'll be
no
right
problem.
They're probably freaking out. And you've got a family. You're probably ready to go too.
back.
So
I mean, I'll be back if you guys do.
Oh no, yeah.
You're stuck in a closet. So
I'm stuck in the closet. I can't get out. Becca went to pick up the kids now. Yeah, so
oh, that's
yeah.
so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so for us, we'll throw things out, and I am much better knowing that I've got him to work through. And I don't think that it's design is not meant to be done in a box.
Mm-hmm.
It's really meant to be a collaboration, and we like to say that we're the firm that not only asks why, but asks why not. And I think that says a lot about who we are and what we really want to be, is asking those questions, not just why, but why not. That really does help us to be better.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And it's cool, like the typology you're working with, where, yeah, you're kind of able to bring more of that meaning into it. Maybe, like
Mm-hmm.
when it's sort of the interiors where you don't have to deal with so much of an enclosure and things. And
Oh, I hate waterproofing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty much why I didn't go into architecture as a whole. Because I'm like, dude, that stuff is just like, I just cannot handle that too much, So
yeah,
it's part of it. And, you got to know it and you got to be good at that too. But you definitely can't let it suck you in. And I feel like the details of that can really suck you in sometimes. So it's finding that balance.
Yeah.
I actually used your desks at Yale. We drove up from Hartford over the summer, took all the architecture, or like 6 or 7 or 8, or I can't remember how many desks out of the architecture studios.
Really?
Loaded them up in a U-Haul, took them down to Hartford, put them inside the Mark Twain house.
Oh, really?
On the 3rd floor of the Mark Twain house. I had a studio set up there for a summer.
Oh,
And then we had to take them back to Yale. So
that's funny.
I've been there.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that building. That was
It was a cool building.
such a castle to
brutalist.
architecture. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so brutal, but it just
Mhm.
such an amazing space to be in. Like the light is just fantastic, and the best fire stairs you've ever been in. And
You got Louis Kahn right across the street.
yeah,
across.
two of them. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
And really good pizza.
a really good pizza.
That was the first time that I had pizza that wasn't like Pizza Hut or Domino's or something. Yeah, we went to what are the two? We went to Sally's.
Sally's, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, what is this big amoeba thing?
It's like charcoal on it and a little burned,
Good.
then you
So
eat it.
good. Yeah. No, I remember I was listening to Joseph's thing either today, or I think I've listened to it in halves, but he was talking about traveling abroad or something like that. And all of a sudden Wonder Bread, or bread wasn't Wonder Bread all of a sudden.
Yeah, yeah.
Different things like that. That was my exact between Connecticut and Italy. Those things of getting out of where you grew up is so important, or so key in
Yeah.
your development.
I had that same feeling. I just grew up in the middle of Kansas, out in the country, and it was just like everything was just so empty and so flat. And that whole time I was just like, I need to get out. Yeah, I gotta.
Yes. There's more. I know there's more.
Well, and it's funny because my mom grew up in like inner city Washington, D.C. Her father was a pastor there, and somehow she ended up in this small town in McPherson. So every summer we'd go to D.C. and I'd get like exposed to that, and it was like that whole family was over there, and it was just like, that's what I want. That's what I want to go right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, cool guys. Well, yeah, thanks for taking all this time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is fun.
Yes.
Yeah, we should get the families together and have dinner
Someday
sometime.
we would love
Yeah.
to actually meet.
Let's do that for
Like,
sure.